Hello everybody, Aufricht Antics video number 5 and today's date. All my life I've been described as weird, odd, strange, abnormal, but I can't help it. It's just the way I am. Anyway, I wanted to do that go fart in your underwear thing that I described in the shorter video. When I was 13, I was out in my front yard one day and this girl, Kathy Dunham, she went by and said, "Joey!" So I said, "Oh, go to hell." And she goes, "Oh, go fart in your underwear." So I made up a song about it. Go fit in your underwear. Go in the fit in your underwear. Go fit, go fit. Go in the fit in your underwear. Go fit in your underwear. Go fit in your underwear. Go forward in your underwear. Go fit in your underwear. Go fit in your underwear. Go forward in your underwear. When school started, I said to this guy, Howard Higginbottom, that I often called Higginbottom Schmigginbottom, or Higgy the Schmigiggy, also known as Schmigiggy Higgy. I turned around one day and I said to him, "Go fart in your underwear." And he's like, "Everybody does." The sailor hat chant that I did in a shorter video, it was because in a dream, that Diane Rawson girl that I started crushing on when I was 13 and she was 9. I was in 7th, she was in 4th. I should have been in 8th, but they made me repeat kindergarten. But anyway, in a dream, she came and sat down next to me and she was wearing a sailor suit minus the sailor hat. But I had also dreamt that I had gone back to be in class with her, and now we were not in 4th grade anymore, but we're in 6th grade, and she was getting ready to go to school band. So I made up this one. Sailor hat, owner body feeling comfortable. Oh, body feeling comfortable. It actually, the sailor hat chant actually came before that, but having the dream about her just kind of intensified things, wanting to go sailor hat. I did it in front of my friend Doug, and he looked at me funny, and I said, "Well, I'm just saying sailor hat." And he's like, "Well, what are you saying sailor hat for?" And I guess I was too embarrassed to tell him exactly why. Whenever we'd play board games at his house and I'd lose, I'd say, "Oh, sailor hat." And he'd say, "Why can't you just say, oh, shucks?" Anyway, it originated from one time when I was a little kid and I was in the car with my parents and we were going past this place in Cleveland called the Freeway by Edgewater Park, and there was this guy out on a rainy day out on Lake Erie boating, and my mom said he deserves to get wet. Well, I figured he'd get wet and it would make his sailor hat all wet and it would stick to his skin. So that's where that came from. Also at the time, in 7th grade, there was this song by Johnny Rivers, Rockin' the Monia and the Boogie Woogie Flu, from the, I guess it came out in the early 60s or mid-60s, something like that. Well, anyway, there's this one part in the song has a rhythm that goes din 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 din. And when I heard it, okay, well, here's the deal. In December, right before I went up to stare at Diane's house from the neighbors on my bicycle, Higginbottom had said to me, "Hey Joe, your hair's you need a haircut, your hair's getting long, you're beginning to look like a girl." After Mrs. Rawson called me honey, well, I thought, well, I don't want to look like that, so I got a haircut. And I've seen my parents' old slides. I don't remember exactly it getting cut that short, but anyway, by March or so, it had grown much longer again, and now it was down, not real long like now, nowhere near long, but as now, but it was down and it was sticking out like a Cro-Magnon man, and I was doing a dance to the music. I did it right here in this very bedroom. I inherited this place from my parents, right in front of this dresser and right in front of that mirror like this. but my hair was sticking out like a Cro-Magnon man, and I thought, wow, Diane Rawson will really think I'm cute for looking like a wild Cro-Magnon man. You know, I start thinking guys with short haircuts, they should grow their hair to the point where it sticks out like a Cro-Magnon man, and chicks should learn to find that sexy. And go down the hallways and other places, or even guys with girlfriends. Ding, 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 ding. Well, imagine if the President of the United States didn't have to be short-haired, clean-cut, conservative-looking, and he could come on and go ding, 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 and then say, vote for me. I think it would be funny as hell. Yeah, I really thought Diane would think I was cute for looking like a wild Cro-Magnon man. Sometimes I went goong 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 of Cro-Magnon men that have the rock in the morning and the woogie woogie blues. Instead of the boogie woogie blues, the googie woogie blues. Well, anyway, that time when I went up to Diane's house, which I talked about in Antics video number 4, I didn't quite get to finish. I was staring into her house, well, not into her house, but I was at the neighbors or the people across the street staring at her house, trying to see into her window from the distance, and her dad came out and said, who are you looking for, honey? Well, I would have much rather have had Diane come out and say, who are you looking for, honey? And I may never know how I would have reacted if she had come out and said that instead. I probably would have died of excitement, because every time I would see her from a distance, my heart would start thumping faster than normal, like and so, or maybe I would have started blushing really bad, and maybe I would have died of intense blushing. You know, I had kind of a complex as far as she went, because when I was 13, she was 9, she was about the same height as me, and I thought, well, maybe she ain't gonna like me because I'm not tall enough. So I decided maybe I should stop being such a fussy eater at home, eat my meat and potatoes and my spinach and everything else. And I tried that for a while. It didn't work out very well. I didn't have the discipline for it. But anyway, I figured, you know, since on the flip side of the coin, since she was about as tall as I was, maybe she could, when I get up too obnoxious with her, she could wrestle me down to the floor right there in the bowling alley. It was carpeted. And then she'd say, what are you going to do now, Joe? I'd say, well, I'm just going to stay here because I'm enjoying this. I mean, if she had wrestled me down to the floor, I would have loved it. I mean, I really would have loved it. I would be like, hold me here as long as you'd like, baby. You could hold me here forever. I won't mind. Well, anyway, also that year in 7th grade, there was this guy named Jerry Keener who sat in the back of the class, 2 seats behind this girl, Allison Mayville, and there was an empty seat in between, so he would sometimes take his foot and just tap her lightly with his foot. You know, it'll go like this. Like one time he went, a 1 and a 2 and a 3. And she's like, Keener, would you cut it out? I asked him one day, why do you always kick Allison? He said, because Allison is the one to kick. So I got this idea in my head, well, maybe Diane Rawson is the one to prank on the phone to make hang-up calls to. Because when I first started crushing on her, and I found out who she was, and then I looked in the phone book, found out where she lived at, the street or phone number and all that. Because back in them days, there was only landlines, and so you could call her up, hide behind the phone. There was no caller ID. People didn't even have answering machines. People just had to answer the phone and put up with somebody like me. I mean, nowadays, it probably would just go on Facebook, create a fake profile, but, you know, the girl could block the guy there, but they couldn't block telephone calls. Not in them days, they couldn't. The phone system was far more primitive. But anyway, I told my dad about wanting to prank people on the phone. He says, why do you want to do that? Poor souls, they got enough trouble. They might have trouble with their bowels and this and that. And I thought, oh, maybe I could make Mr. Rawson mad with constipation. He wouldn't know who's making all those calls to the house, but he'd be angry with constipation. I bragged about it to the assistant principal that I was doing stuff like that, making hang-up calls, calling once, leaving the phone ring once, hanging up. Because I had some shyness going on there, you know. I was one of those shy kids. Well, anyway, Mr. Kirscher, the assistant principal in the junior high, said, well, what if they run to the phone and something spills? But it just gave me another idea it just put another idea in my head. See, he was trying to make me feel guilty, but I had sadistic inclinations, so I got the idea. Maybe I could make Mrs. Rawson drop her measuring cup on the floor, spill something on the rug. Maybe it would even break if it's made of glass. I guess I better watch out. I have a glass measuring cup right now in my kitchen, but they're easily replaceable at the thrift store. I could always replace it with a plastic one instead, and then I don't have to worry about it breaking. But anyway, one day I was teasing my friend Rick and Doug, and no, just Rick. Doug wasn't in that class that I was in with Rick, but there was this girl, Cheryl, and I kept singing, Cheryl loves Rick, and stuff like that, and so Rick said, Joe hates his father. I don't know where that came from, but that's what he said. And Cheryl Cook looked at me and said, oh, Joe, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Well, after that, I imagine being sent back to the 4th grade and being in class with Diane Rawson and her saying to me in a loving but critical way, oh, Joe, you ought to be ashamed of yourself hating your father. Or, oh, Joe, you ought to be ashamed of yourself staring into my house window. I got a real high from that. Yeah, okay. Let's see how much time I have left on here. Oh, wow, 12 minutes already. Just past 12 minutes. Well, anyway, Mrs. Rawson, she accepted all my collect calls from various payphones, and I had periodically called a couple times, made threats, once at 14 and a half, once at 16, and other crazy calls at 16, and then I made some hang-up calls at 17, and then I decided to call collect. She said, is that you, creepo? I used the name Mr. Rawson on the call, and she laughed, thought, oh my God, I called my husband a creepo. When she got on, she found out it wasn't her husband, and she said, well, why did you say that you were Mr. Rawson? And she said, you've been calling our house off and on for the last 2.5 years, haven't you? I said, oh, I did it to your house before that. Don't you remember about 4 years ago, I would call your house, leave the phone ring once, hang up, and do it like 10 times in a row? She said, yeah. And I said, now ain't that cute? Because for 4 years, I had been sitting in my house, 4 years before, not all the time, but once I was practicing being cute for Diane by beating on my metal garbage can in my bedroom garbage can, singing Peter Cottontail and Jingle Bells, and at the end saying, now ain't that cute? And I was practicing. Well, after 4 years, I finally got to say, now ain't that cute? But I ended up saying it to her mom and to Diane's mom instead, because Diane was at school. And then after all those years of waiting, she just says, no, it isn't. I'm just wondering what people think. I wonder what some of the girls that know me, especially from the Cleveland metal scene, would say to that. I really, 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 really wonder. What else can I do? I only got less than a minute here. Well, anyway, there's this other part of the Johnny Rivers song where he says, old man rhythm's got a hold of me too. I thought they were saying young man ribby's got a whole fuggy flu, and I thought of later on in life, the ribbies, nibbies, snibbies, and sniggies. I think I like snibby and sniggy the best. When the Grim Reaper comes for me, I'm going to say, you can't take me. I'm young man Snibby with the whole fuggy flu. And he's going to say, you're old man Mud, your time is up. All right. That's enough. More in the next one.